Generation X Paranormal. Well, hey everybody, welcome back.
Hello.
We are Generation X Paranormal. That's where we take a certain topic of the paranormal and break it down from kind of a middle-of-the-road perspective. Mm-hmm. And today we've got a very interesting one. Mm-hmm. Before we get into that, I want to say thank you for all the support we've had. Yeah. We've had some tremendous growth, and we're very, very happy. And if you're watching this on YouTube, of course, please like, subscribe, comment, those sort of things. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, follow us. We'd love to have you. It's great. We've just been really touched by the amount of outpouring love and the amount of support we've had up to this point. So thank you. But kind of getting back to it. We have, and we've had some psychic mediums on before, and we've loved every opportunity to speak with them, but we never really touched on what we're going to touch on today. We'd never really touched on past lives. Mm-hmm. And, all of us are only here for a certain amount of time, and I think all of us at some point wrestle with that idea of what now? What happens now?
Right.
And we don't want to get too far in the religion or anything like that because, of course, everybody has a different interpretation of how that goes. And that's certainly not the part that we're coming to you from. That's not the angle at all. It's just kind of understanding what potentially that could be. Mm-hmm. And today we're going to have Corbie Mitleid, and we're very excited to have her. So can you tell us a little bit about Corbie?
Yeah, so she is a psychic, channel, and medium. And she's been reading since 1973.
Wow.
She has traveled coast to coast and into Canada as a full-time intuitive counselor. She's appeared frequently on radio and television and is an inspirational teacher and facilitator. Her certifications and affiliations include a certified tarot master and certified professional tarot reader. She's a member of the American Tarot Association and the Tarot Guild, and she's an ordained minister of the Sanctuary of the Beloved. Her specific skills include tarot and oracle divination deck readings, spiritual intuitive counseling, past life retrieval and analysis, mediumship, and spirit guide conferences.
Wow.
So she's got a lot behind her.
Brings a lot to the table,
Yes,
that's for
yes.
sure. That's awesome. Well, I mean, let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and bring her on.
All right.
Hey, Corbie.
How are you?
We're doing good. How about yourself?
Yeah, for single-digit land, not bad. Not
Yeah.
bad.
I know we were talking just about that shortly before we got started. It's brutal. It has been, like this. Even last year we had a spell like this, but we're in southern Missouri, and I can't really remember the last couple of years prior to it being this bad.
No, for this long of a stretch.
Yeah.
Catskill Mountains here, we get polar vortex once a year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, for sure. Well, listen, we are very excited to have you. Thank you so much for being on our show. We had talked a little bit about this prior to getting started. Our core audience is very much so. We even joked, I would be surprised if they believe a third of the stuff that we talk about, but they have probably seen a thing or heard a thing that at least gives them some question of what normalcy is, what that even means anymore. But, they're starting to at least appreciate that there could be more answers out there. So, we reached out and we really want to talk to you about past lives.
Right. No problem there.
I think that's something that that's something that I think we all want to consider because we know we're on a clock here, the way we are right now. Mm-hmm. So there's always that question of...
I'm hitting 69 next month. I'm very aware of that clock.
Right. But yeah, that being said, how did you get interested or how did you start down this path of understanding past lives?
Well, the prequel to that is when I was 9, I wrote a book called The Witch Family by Eleanor Estes, kids book, but I said, wow, there's magic in the world. I wanted to go find it. Fast forward to 1973 when I was in senior year in high school, got my first tarot deck, worked with that for 20 years, keeping my ego out of the way, and being a clear channel, all of a sudden in the early 90s, I could do hands-on healing and talk to dead people because the universe had handed me my draft notice and said, hello, you're working for us. Now, when you take that draft notice, higher self, spirit, folks upstairs, go rifling through your internal file cabinet. Yeah, I know that dates me. But to see what you got. And
Right.
what are my talents? Theater major at Brown University. I acted professionally in New York, so I understand stories and characters. Words are my drug of choice. I'm a writer, so I can tell those stories. And history has fascinated me since I was a small thing in single digits. So put all that together, and my top skills are tarot and oracle cards. I'm a certified tarot master, and past lives. But there's a big difference, and this is something your audience really needs to take in. They are probably very familiar with past life regression.
Right.
What I do is past life retrieval, and here is the difference. Regression must only be done by a certified hypnotherapist or certified past life regressionist, because you are the one who's going to be hypnotized, put into trance, and you're going to be wandering around in the Akashic to find your stories. If you come across something terribly traumatic, a death, gang rape, something, they have the ability to pull you out just enough. You can still observe, but not relive. Okay. What I do is there's a layer between that, but it's faster and simpler. You give me an obsession or a phobia or a person or a place, and I run up to the Akashic, pull down the book, and say, read chapter 2. So a couple of examples how that works and why past lives are important. There was a woman who came to me and said, look, my son is 29. He still won't make any decisions without checking with me first. He won't live more than a mile away. What is going on? And so I went upstairs, about 30 seconds, and I said, okay, I'm seeing 1944 Utah Beach, so this is D-Day. Your son is a soldier on the beach. He's got a lot of shrapnel in his leg. He's bleeding out. You're his commanding officer, and you scramble over the dune, and you pull him to safety. You take some shrapnel too, but you both live. And I open my eyes, and she's very pale, and she says, can you see my rank? I said, yeah, you were a sergeant. She goes, he's called me Sarge since he was 3 years old, and we have never known where that came from.
Wow.
Number
That's
2.
awesome.
Wow.
Woman out in your neck of the woods. Nobody in the family had anything to do with the Civil War, but she was fascinated by it and the Underground Railroad. What's going on? Go upstairs, say, okay, I'm seeing a whitewashed room with a low ceiling. There are 2 tall gentlemen, one military uniform, one civilian, and their heads are bent over because they're too tall for the room. You are kneeling by the bed. Your dress looks 1861, too, somewhere in there. It's dark gray. It's got black soutache around the sleeves and the peplum and the hem. In the bed, there is this very tiny old black woman, and she's dying, and you're all grieving because you had gotten her out of a Mississippi plantation, and she was almost to the end of the railroad and freedom, but she was dying and wasn't going to make it. And I open my eyes, and this woman is crying and says, I have had this dream for 20 years exactly. I've never known why.
Wow.
That's when it's useful, not when you come to me and say, I must have been Amberlynn because I can't wear turtlenecks.
Right.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean I've heard of.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of. And I don't remember what show it was or anything like that, but I remember there was a show about children with
Ghosts within your child.
There
That was
it
the
is.
first time I had really tuned into it. Yeah.
Yeah, that blew me away to I guess being a very analytical person, for me, it was very difficult to wrap my head around the fact that, this kid was in, I think, the World Trade Center or something like that when it happened, or maybe one of the aircraft.
One
I can't
of the
remember.
stories, yeah.
Yeah, and really
He was
could
a
pull
9/11
that.
victim.
Right, right.
Exactly.
And that, I mean, honestly, that one really floored me. And I've always been, I don't know about skeptical, but I've always been really curious as to what that bridge is like. I mean, how is it do you believe that everybody has that capability, or is that just something that only a certain amount of people can have that capability to reach back like that?
Number 1, you really think we're all smart enough to get it done in 1 or 2? So not happening.
No.
We've all had
I know I'm not.
dozens, hundreds of past lives. But we don't remember them unless they are going to be useful in some form. If you're a janitor in Des Moines and all of a sudden you do a past life regression and because you want to, and you find out you were Napoleon Bonaparte, are you really going to want to play with that mop anymore? Probably.
No, I wouldn't think so.
No. But one of my clients was born into a Jewish family and always felt out of place. Couldn't understand why. And there was no reason to feel out of place. She wasn't treated badly, anything. But she did a regression and found out that she had been a German pilot in World War I. And, great guy, but anti-Semitic as hell. But for them, that was normal.
Right.
He was Lutheran in Germany, born in 1879. No, and the memory that we got for her was there was one Jewish pilot in World War I. His name is Wilhelm Frankel, and he got the Blue Max, the biggest award that the Kaiser could give you. And he was meeting this person, and Frankel stuck out his hand, and she remembered putting her hands behind her back, giving him a very stiff, salute, clicking his heels, but wouldn't even touch him. So you were born into a Jewish family this time to see the other side. They're not monsters.
So
they're just people.
Lessons. Basically, we're meant to learn something.
Well, I'm probably due up for a whole ton of them.
Yeah. That makes sense, though.
Yeah, it really does. Do you find that it's always some... I guess basically my question is it always some cataclysmic event that you automatically will go to, or is there can it be very, I wouldn't say mundane, but very, I guess not like a 9/11 or something like that maybe you're just not learning that same lesson over and over again?
There's nothing in what I just told you that was cataclysmic. It wasn't about how they died or anything. It was just who they were at that time.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good point. Okay. Yeah.
You hear a lot of adult stories like I was a famous person or something like that.
Everybody wants to be.
Right.
But
I'm pretty short, so if I was Napoleon, I'd check out. I mean,
Yeah. Well, with the kids, that was the first time I really took it seriously because I actually work with children, and the stuff that they were saying, the kids can't make that up.
No.
They would never know about it. They weren't informed enough to know about it. Whereas an adult, it's harder to trust what they're saying. They could make up an entire story. You know what I mean? So with kids, when I saw that, I was like, there's no way they would know this stuff. And like some of the accounts they even found like the people that they were related to and the pictures of who they were in the past. And they actually come back looking like them, which is crazy. And I've seen even like the birthmarks and stuff, like if they got wounded in the past life, they've got a birthmark in that area on their body.
Yes.
And so it was very interesting to me ever since then.
These are things that won't come back unless they can help you. It's why if someone says, oh, I don't know, just tell me a past life, I'll go, no. Because I could give you something from 1642 Belgium that was so on target. But if it meant nothing to you, it didn't affect you in this life, you'd have a whole omega brain. Would not get in.
Right. So, that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that especially for past life, especially being able to do I get the regression and definitely the retrieval. I find that so interesting because, there's so many times in your life where all these different events come at you and you always wonder, could I have done that differently? Did I learn anything from that? And guilty because I've done a million of them. But, when the day comes, I always wonder, if there was such a thing as, well, I believe there is, but, if going into the next life, I sure hope I remember not to do that again.
Well,
yeah.
Now we're getting into very interesting cat's cradle semantics. Me, we'll never be back. We're a one and done recipe. And the way I explain it is the higher self versus the incarnations. Let's take the actor Matt Smith. Now, Matt was the 11th Doctor. He was my doctor. But when he was done with the bow tie and the too short pants, He hung those up, and he played 2 seasons of Prince Philip in The Crown. And when he was done princing, he hung up the military suit, and now he's some whack job on House of the Dragon. Matt Smith is the soul. The Doctor, the Prince, and the whack job don't know each other, have nothing to do with each other, aren't, there's just no connection. The one who is making everything happen in those lives and choosing how they act is the soul, the higher self.
That's a great explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I can also explain it is my father was my best friend. He and I shared the same birthday. And he died in 2001, about a week before 9/11. He was a fabulous cardiologist. Patients loved him. Sometimes when I do some medical intuitive work, especially if it's cardiac, Dad comes in. What does he still bring? He still puns terribly. His incisive medical knowledge, his deep compassion, his wisdom. What did he leave behind and has been totally dissolved into the ether? His anxiety, his depression, and his hypochondria. They're no longer necessary. That's the kind of thing we use to learn down here.
Okay. That's pretty profound.
Yeah, I'm taking it all in. For sure.
Do you find, since we're talking about, we'll probably breach a little bit now into reincarnations, we're kind of touching on it. Is it something that we always come back as the same gender? Or
No.
I know you mentioned before that there was right. Yeah.
I tend to come back male most times. My female lives are when I really need to do a lot of work. So, for instance, in this life, 3 bouts of breast cancer, 2 divorces, rape, poverty, abuse, dysfunctional childhood. But at 69, got a fabulous marriage, have a career I love. All of what I went through gave me the ability to be as deeply compassionate and non-judgmental a person as possible. But the reason I went through all that is because most of the time when I'm male, I don't treat women very well, apparently. So this time it was, we're going to put you in a Dolly Parton style body so you get to experience when guys never look above the neck or below the waist. And you have to learn to deal with that and value yourself better than that. Well, because of the dysfunctional childhood, I didn't. I assumed what I looked like was all I was worth, which is why first cancer out of the blue, when I was acting in New York, lumpectomies and radiation, skin cancer from the radiation in 2000, and then 18 months after I married my Carl, higher self said, look, we need you down there to do teaching, so we're going to remove the problem for you. And it was a second primary, which brings the danger clock back to 0. But the docs at Mass General said, well, 3 strikes, you're out. We're taking the rack, we're taking the ovaries, and you're going from this Dolly Parton figure to a fat fire plug with permanent side effects, and we're going to damage you so much internally you'll never have sex again. 3 weeks, suck it up. Now, this is how I learned. Did I go home and cry? Yes, I was normal. But then I knew it's living the examined life. I have to find 3 reasons to be okay with it. Number 1, you don't have them, you can't get cancer there. Number 2, the top half is not going to get slammed in the refrigerator door at the doctor's every year, and every woman listening knows exactly what the hell I'm talking about.
Yes.
3, implants? Cool, I'll be perky till I'm 93. That was 20 years ago, and this is it. Perfectly clean.
Yeah.
I still don't look 69, still happily married, and I take what I learned to help other women think better of themselves. And a mastectomy does not destroy who you are. That's the purpose of past lives. That's the purpose of reincarnation. That's the purpose of karma.
Wow. That is incredibly profound, and thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
We've definitely gone through our fair share of. I'm a cancer survivor as well. Mine was thyroid. It's still cancer, but
can I give you something? You're not a survivor. You are a cancer dancer. Survivors, you hang on by teeth and toenails. Cancer dancers find out how graceful they are under pressure. They avoid getting their toes stepped on, and they get off the dance floor in one piece. You happen to dance with thyroid cancer. That's all.
Oh. Did you hear that? I'm a dancer.
For the first time.
For the first time in a while. Yeah. No, and you're right. And I also had a brain bleed, which that was fairly within the last 3 years or so. So I've definitely walked a mile in shoes that I didn't expect I'd walk in this lifetime. But I definitely think I grew, and I still continue to grow from that. So I definitely understand that. So since we talked about it and we kind of touched on it a little bit, can you explain what reincarnation is, for at least for the listeners and viewers that may not necessarily know what that completely entails?
Okay, reincarnation is when you have crossed over and you've, unpacked your bag, signed the guest register, taken the orientation tour. You review everything in your life. You see what you did well and get to experience all of the good feelings you gave other people for that. Same thing for things that were not so good. But then you're done. There is no such thing as hell. Hell is what humans invent to control other people. God is so... He's created everything. Can you imagine somebody... We are little cockroaches on this dust mote planet at the ass end of a middling galaxy. Is he really concerned whether you forgot to go to church on Sunday? Whether you lied to your teacher? No. So there is no hell. Once you process this life, you decide what you want to do in the next one. You decide who you're going to be with. You decide what you want to work on. You see, karma is not carrot and stick. Karma is 5 things, as we learned with Robert Schwartz's book on pre-birth planning: unbalanced energy, healing, service, contrast, and healing of beliefs. So with me, it was healing of beliefs about women. It was contrast, male versus female. And at the end of this life, hopefully I'll have them checked off on the board. And the next life, my higher self will choose something else to learn. That's why.
So karma is not necessarily you getting paid back for all the bad things that you did.
Much as everybody says, oh, karma's got to bite you in the ass. No.
Right.
It won't.
It's more about learning and choosing to go back and fix.
Right.
The example I love to use. Do you remember Ryan White?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
For people watching, listening who don't remember, Ryan White was a kid who got AIDS from a blood transfusion in the late 80s and early 90s, before we knew much at all. His entire family was treated like horrors, like pariahs. But somehow he became friends with Elton John. And Elton loved the family, cherished the family, loved Ryan. When he died at 18 of AIDS, Elton played at his funeral. Elton got clean of drugs, alcohol, sex, you name it, because he was inspired by Ryan. And then he created the Elton John AIDS Foundation, which has raised $500 million for AIDS research globally.
That's amazing.
In the old days, people would say, oh, Ryan White must have been terrible. Look at that bad karma. Now we realize Ryan's soul, higher self, looked at this possible life plan and said, short life, tough life. But look what we can create from it. So his was a karma of service. And he was a courageous soul.
Very much so. Yeah, I remember his story very well. Being a child during that, or being younger during that time frame, I definitely remember that being a really difficult. I mean, it was on MTV, it was on so many different things, and it really did touch a lot of different people. So I definitely remember that.
Yeah, millennials and Gen Zs not so much, which is why I still bring that story up.
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
Definitely,
for sure.
So with reincarnation, I guess my question is, does somebody know that without having to go to someone to retrieve that? Is that something that
when you
typically
say that, what do you mean?
Know that they are reincarnated, or know what they were reincarnated from?
Well, what I say is, I'm not special. You can do what I do. We're all wired like the same house plan. There are exercises you can do to go back, find out who you were. You do not have to go to a psychic, but if you're going to do that, learn to do it properly so you don't get trapped if you see a horrible life. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be a nightmare for real. Like
Yeah, I mean, I
actual
wouldn't
nightmare.
recommend doing that.
No.
I definitely want somebody that could guide me through something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be scary.
Yeah, I could never underestimate the power of what, especially having had a brain bleed, the power of what my mind can do to my body, because we'll talk about anxiety and all kinds of stuff that happens when that happens. But I've learned that this thing that rolls around my bucket's more powerful than I give it credit for. And I think that I definitely want somebody to at least assist me in something like that.
Yeah, I would never trust myself to do that by myself.
Yeah.
So, saying that, do you remember your own past lives?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember two of them. The one that first woke me up. This is back in the 80s, and I was having this mad obsession with one particular member of a Philadelphia rock group, and I'm not that way. I'm just not. But doing some work with a woman, I all of a sudden saw myself in 1783 for Scotland. I was this short, round blonde, and a taller Scottish lord type. And it was the two of us, and I was very confused. Now, my history stuff, at that point, it was Tudor England, baby, and Wars of the Roses. I knew from nothing about Scotland or the 18th century. This is way before Outlander, by the way.
Right. I'm there with you.
And I was working with someone also in Philly, and she wasn't a professional, but we were trying to figure this out. And we knew that I was the local tavern Round Hills and had been having an affair with the Lord and got pregnant. And he had sent one of his retainers with a pouch of gold. Here, get out of here. And I refused because I thought I was blackmailing. And his retainer instead drowned me, made sure the whole thing was taken care of.
Wow.
His chief retainer is somebody else in the band. So we figured out the pieces, but we couldn't get a name. And this person and I were having linguine and clam sauce in a mainline seafood restaurant. And all of a sudden in my head was Marcus Baron Gordon Huntley. And I'm thinking, what's with this two titles thing? Well, when you want to know about English peerage, you go to a big book named Debrett's, and it's this thick, 900,000 years of stuff. So we found that in 1752 was born Alexander, 12th Marquis of Huntley. And in 1784, he was named Baron Gordon of Huntley. Marcus Baron Gordon Huntley. No freaking way that I would have known that. And when we looked at his history, what I saw happening fit in just perfectly.
Wow.
That's pretty
so
wild.
cool.
Yeah.
And the best part, as soon as we figured that out, the obsession with this person, like a soap bubble, gone. What I had to learn is he wasn't mine then, and he wasn't going to be mine now.
That's interesting.
That is very interesting.
So you wonder going through life when you have those little, where you can't forget someone or something like that you were never, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's making me rethink everything now, by the way. Like little things are entering my mind like, what about this? What about this? That's so interesting.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit floored, which is why I'm so quiet. I'm just like processing all this.
Well, I find that so compelling, but I've got a little furry thing running around here. Our dogs, so anybody who's listening or watching, if one pops up, but that perfectly ties into a question that I have. What about pets?
Yeah, they
can. Yeah.
And I've got a deeply personal story on this. I had been a Maine Coon mom cat for 40 years. And there was a brown tabby. His name was Oswald, and I loved him. And he had gotten me through divorce and remarriage and cancer, and he was just my best bud. But we had to put him to sleep at age 17 because he'd lost half his weight, he hurt, and he was mad. He didn't want it, but there was just no way. So hello, dog. That night I cried myself to sleep, swollen eyes. And I dreamt that I saw Oswald back to his 20 pounds, and we were in Boston, and there was little swan boats, and he jumped in the prow of the boat, turned around, and put himself right there. And I literally jackknifed awake, full of joy. And the message had been very clear. Mom, thank you so much. That body sucked. I'm so glad to be out of it, but I promise I'm coming home. Watch for me. So we worked with a good animal communicator, and we figured out which breeder and which litter. And I said, how am I going to know which one he is? And she listened. She said, oh, he's got it handled. So go to the breeders, and there are 4 kittens, and you can't see heads or tails. They're all sleeping all in a mass. And he's going to have the same name. So I sat about 6 feet away, and I went, Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. One of them. And came slamming over, like, where you been? We take him home. Wow. First thing he does is he goes and he naps at his old spot for 2 hours under the bed. Says hello to all the cats he grew up with. Eats out of everybody's food bowl. And says I'm home. That's why his new name was Oswald the Great. He even had his own Facebook page. And when you look at the baby pictures, Oswald the First, Oswald the Second, it's 20 some years apart, except for the fact that the breed has changed the jaw a little bit. Markings are exactly the same. Wow. When we had to send him off this time in 2020, because there was a lot wrong with him this time. He had bad heart, stuff like that. And we did it very gently. We did it at home. And about 8 o'clock at night, I hadn't been thinking about him, nothing. But all of a sudden I hear, I'm fine, Mom. And I lost it. He does not want to come back. His energy is out romping in our hayfield. And I get it because they live a long time. And, at 69, I can't promise I would be here.
Yeah.
But do they come back? Hell yes.
That's very comforting because I know that the majority of our audience, and I know, I should say, I assume, but they're pet lovers, especially the ones that we've spoken to. And, you always wonder, because you can't necessarily speak to them in that sense as they are right here now, although I'm pretty sure both our dogs talk to us nonstop because they never bark. They control us.
Yes.
But as you heard not a few minutes ago, but yeah, I've often wondered, of course there's sentient beings. I mean, anything that has that sentient and that ability to have compassion and love and things like that. I mean, why wouldn't they, Yes. But yeah, I find that absolutely.
It's comforting.
It is. We've had a bad run too. We've had a couple of pets that we've lost earlier than we should have. One that was here with us a very long time, probably outlived longer than he should have. But yeah, that's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. I know that's very touching.
I know.
Okay, let's take a moment for everybody to get their Kleenex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all right.
So, yeah, how can somebody find out about their past lives? I mean, what would you recommend our listeners do if they are interested in finding out about that?
Well, find yourself either a retrievalist like me or a past life regressionist, hypnotherapist. Look at what you're interested in that you have no idea why. You're afraid of eating oatmeal or you have to collect Victorian china. There's probably a story there. Where do your interests lie? Where are you unreasonably afraid? Where are you drawn to? Those are the kinds of things that will give you clues.
So if you're interested basically and obsessed with a certain place, I'm a little obsessed with like Ireland and Scotland, which is actually in my DNA. So
Right.
I always attribute it to that.
Doesn't mean that
But
you
that's
weren't there
interesting.
previously.
Right.
We can come back in our own families. But yes, no, a past life thing that would wake you up would be, your background is Scots Irish, but all of a sudden you absolutely had this thing about Ecuador.
Right. It would
That's
totally throw me off.
right. That's the
Right.
kind of thing that tells you there's a story there. So.
And one thing, I'm glad you kind of said that about the families, because one thing I've looked into this a little bit is a lot of people say that they think it was their grandfather that came back as their son, a lot of people like to say that it comes back in the family line like over and over and over.
It does.
I don't know if there's an explanation to that or what is it about that?
Example.
Okay.
In my family, all right, look, there are still people in my family who think I'm a charlatan who steals people's money, and they won't tell anybody what I really do. They say I'm a motivational speaker. Yeah, okay, fine. But my very favorite person is my nephew. My mother had 2 miscarriages between my brother and me. And from what I've been able to deduce, one of them was my nephew, who should have been my bigger sister. But now he's the one person in the family who gets his aunt. And when he was 13, he said to me, "Are we our souls, or are our souls bigger than us?" I said, "Darling, I'm not allowed to talk to you about that kind of thing until you're an adult at 18. So table the question and then come back to me." And he did, and we did.
Wow. That's awesome.
And now he is a genius scientist. So, the kid is he's going to make a big difference in the world. Big, big difference.
That's really cool. I know I've heard so many, or like read so many stories about where they'll call them like a family name that they wouldn't have known, or they'd say to their mom like, "I used to be your grandmother," or "I used to be your," or "I used to call you this when you were little," and I mean at like 2 or 3 years old,
Yes.
where they wouldn't have known, how to do that, and so the parents always like, grow up like, "I think this is this person." It's just so interesting to me.
Yeah, that is definitely things that I've heard in the past too. I know it's happened in my family as well, where a nephew of ours resembles me a lot, and even his own father says, "Man, he's just like you." I mean, I know they don't necessarily have to be, alive or gone, but I'm just saying genetically that makes sense. So why couldn't there be that that next level as well, where reincarnation does happen, where you are that person at some point, And I'm really sorry for. Go ahead.
One of the most important things is very often when a mother has a miscarriage and she is devastated, I remind her, no, the kid just went back up the slide. And the soul is fine. The kid will just come down in a different form, which very, very often happens.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I deeply apologize to my family if I come back, because I know once was already enough, but I'm just putting that out there in the ether. But, we've been talking about reincarnation, and I know that, people have different iterations. How many times can we come back? Is there a set limit, or how does that work?
It's infinite. We come back when we want to. Some people they much prefer just being a discarnate, which means no body, and work upstairs. I had one client speak to her grandfather, who was a military veteran, and he said he wasn't going to come back for a while because his job was to help Desert Storm people who were instantly killed by IUDs, violent deaths. He is there to help those souls make the transition. He loves his work up there. I kid and say I adore what I do, and I'm going to do it until I'm 2 weeks dead. Then I'll be a spirit guide, change the sign in my office. Big deal. So
That's
True.
awesome. Oh, that's interesting. It's so much to like kind of process.
Yeah.
I know, and when you've done it as long as I do, all the stories they just line up. Like take a deli number
Yeah.
and get in line. So.
And I mean, we've watched that show, and I read the book about the one kid.
Yeah.
He
was a pilot, wasn't he?
He was a pilot in
yeah.
World War II. And he would draw pictures ever since he could, like, pick up a crayon of like planes flying over like a ship, and they had like the big red sun for Japanese. I mean, he was like 2 years old or something, and he would have night terrors. He would wake up screaming and crying, saying his plane crashed and he was on fire and all this stuff. And I mean, this was over a long period of time.
Right.
And they wrote the book about it. I can't remember the name now, but it was just so fascinating. I mean, they eventually found the family. Like the parents did all this research, found the family, and the guy that he reincarnated as, his older sister was still alive. And he was able to go meet her, and he looked just like the guy. It was crazy. And he called her by like their childhood nickname. It was just, it gives me goosebumps, like talking about it. But they eventually went to the spot where they think, the plane would have crashed.
Right.
And he was able to like put flowers on the water, and he cried. I mean, he like majorly cried, like just. And after that, he never spoke of it again. It's like it closed that gap that he needed to kind of move on and not think about it anymore.
Right. So we mentioned a little bit about being able to reincarnate, but I brought it up because of my nephew. Since we are very similar, we look alike. I think even our mannerisms are very similar.
Yes.
Can you come back as the same? Can there be doppelgangers? Basically, is what I'm asking. Can we both have been a reincarnation of the same person?
It is possible, but not likely.
Okay.
I can't think of anybody that I've worked with in 20-some years where that's been the case.
Okay. Well, that's good, because I'm pretty sure that these two incarnations of whatever we are, I don't want them to be the same.
Now, there are things called double drops.
Okay.
In that the higher self can send 2 soul fragments down. But you will never meet them. And they are not doppelgangers like that.
Okay.
What I understand, and this person may be dead by now, because this is something I learned 20 years ago. Another soul fragment was here. New Zealand sheep farmer with 5 sons and a mild alcohol problem, which was interesting because I came in and my mother was an alcoholic cross-addicted with barbiturates. So there is something with alcohol that my soul seems to want to learn.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've seen mentioned a lot is people coming back and getting with the same person, like as far as like getting married to the same person or in a relationship with the same person. Is that something that happens over and over? Like they've got to fix that
Not
relationship?
Not necessarily fix, but remember what I said about my father being my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
He and I usually come in same gender, same generation as each other's best friend. But I knew, or my soul knew, that with all of the heavy stuff that it had planned to get me through, I would need a best friend as a father. And so that soul agreed to come in as dad. And to give you an idea, I dedicated my first book to my father. And that's us.
Oh,
okay.
So
awesome.
It's very obvious those are two buddies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, interestingly, I had never had any kind of relationship, any life with my mother before now. Her karma was always with dad. But since I needed someone to play the heavy in my life so that there would be that trip trigger and I could make a decision one way or the other. She agreed to do that in this lifetime.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And she's the one that I
Sure.
look the most like, interestingly.
That's interesting. So you kind of said that we come back, we can choose to come back and work on these things. So there's, the classic thing about reincarnation that you always hear is like, people like to make a joke of it, but like you can come back as a tree or a rock or like you're supposed to work.
No, I think that we always
like
come
work
back
your
as
way up
people.
is basically what I'm saying. Like, yeah, like if you're bad in this, like you gotta live your life out as like a frog or something like that.
No. I believe that the Hindus believe that, but I don't.
Okay.
Now, on the other hand, we can be on different planets, like foreign exchange students. Very often,
Okay.
I mean, I learned this because I wrote for years for a fabulous graphic novel series called ElfQuest. So I learned the concept of human other. And
Okay.
when I get someone who has never felt at home anywhere, tough making friends, has abilities other people don't understand. If you've ever seen the movie Powder, think of that.
Oh, yeah.
But looking more human. And they're lost and they come to me for reading or guidance. And I say, okay, I'm going to give you 2 words. I want you to close your eyes. And I'm going to give you 2 words and I want you to immediately tell me which one resonates with you. Human. Other. If it's other, their eyes fly open like, oh my God, somebody has seen me. And it's okay. You're a foreign exchange student here this time. That's all. Learn as much as you can. Now,
That opens up a whole new can.
It does. Me, I am human. If I'd been on another planet, it's been their foreign exchange student. But I am a bridge. I'm an ambassador. I am not scared of other, which helps them.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's interesting. Listen to me talk. We've talked to a medium previously that talked about that she could communicate with otherworldly beings and that she can see them.
Pleiadians, Lemurians, yeah. I know they're there, but they're not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. So it's just interesting. I mean, that was the first time I had ever heard a medium say that. Unless they just didn't want to talk about it, which is I understand why. Because that's a big skeptical, subject,
yes.
which we've delved a little bit into that stuff. But we're learning so much more that we had no idea was even out there, information. But that's a very interesting thought that now this exists in this realm of lives.
Right.
That we could not just be human, but something else as well.
For sure.
Which is very, very interesting.
Yeah. Enough said for me. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I said, I'm sure that y'all can think of people that you look at each other and go, wow, Doug is really from Planet Zorch. And
I got tons of them. I was in the military for 12 years, and I can tell you I can count. Well, I probably can't count, but there were tons of them.
But it's not like Men in Black. You're not going to find them within the mail machines. No.
Right. Right. So I got to ask, before we got on, you had mentioned a story that you were going to consider telling.
Oh, that's about mediumship, if you want to switch over to that for a bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it real quick. I mean, I'd love to hear that story.
Because I can do past lives as fast as I can. I do past life galleries the way other people do mediumship galleries. But I won't do mediumship in public because I don't censor what I get. And I don't believe that some of these really deeply personal things should be out in front of the audience.
Sure.
Now, the way I get my mediumship, I don't fish because it's too easy to go, oh, I see a woman in a flower dress handing you a rose. It's your grandmother. Oh, can I bomb it now? No.
Yeah.
So I get their dog tags. For instance, my father, Jerome Richard Dorkin, who died in 2001 at the age of 80. Relationship, full name, year they died, and how old they were. Doesn't tell me anything, but gets me into the energy. And for some reason, my guides like playing charades. So I put my hands out and they could go. They smoked, they toked, there was an accident, they had surgery, or I'll get vocal cues or body stuff. And that's how my person will know, yeah, that is Uncle Don. But there was a biracial same-gender couple. The black partner had died, and her white widow wanted to come to me and see if I could reach her. And she gave me that information, and all of a sudden, now look at this face. Nice kid from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I have manners. But what comes out of my mouth in flawless urban ebonics was, well, shit, it ain't my white bitch. And I'm going, oh! But the woman in front of me was laughing hysterically and nodding, because that is how her partner, Isabel, walked into the house after every business trip. You can't do that on a stage. It ain't safe.
No. I understand.
But,
That's
another
hilarious.
example of that, a little cleaner. There was a woman in York, Pennsylvania. She was a widow. Her husband had died 6 months ago. And all I had again was husband, name, when he died, how old he was. Nothing else about him. And so I listen, and all of a sudden my hands go out, my head tilts, and it's, hey, baby. That's how he walked in after work, every night after work, because they had lived in Dallas. She had married a Texan. I didn't know.
Yep.
But it's that kind of thing that when I get it, yeah, I've got someone. Do I do it all the time? Oh my God, I wish I did. I'd have a reality show myself. But I get it often enough. Actually, I was offered a reality show.
Really?
Were you?
I was, but because I'm brash and I'm funny and easy in front of the cameras. But they said, well, tell them, nobody can do what you. I said, wait. You can't say nobody can do what I do. That puts a lie to everything I've ever said. I tell people I'm not special. You can do what I do. And they said, oh, well, then we're not interested, and we're hired the Hollywood media.
Oh, no.
But I'm sorry, that's the devil's bargain. Yeah, you can make money and be famous for 15 minutes if we're allowed to lie about you. It's like the Long Island median. Have we talked about her yet?
No, actually, I was going to say that when you said that, because you're outgoing and stuff, I immediately thought of Teresa Caputo,
right?
Because that's exactly how she is.
Think about it. You see her show. There's this person feeling up the cantaloupes in a Wegmans supermarket, and she walks up and says, "Excuse me, your Aunt Dora says you got a bald tire in the back. You're going to die in a week if you don't get it fixed. Just telling you." And she walks away. No. Number one.
Can you imagine being in the grocery store?
That's what they show. Number one, her PR persons go out and scout out every Wegmans on Long Island, pick one. Then they interview a bunch of people and have them sign legal model releases, and then they rehearse it 6 times. And the thing is, there's going to be something on my own podcast in a couple of weeks called Drive-By Psychic Shootings, because that's what this is. And people who don't realize that you don't do that try to accost people and scare the piss out of them. I've trained any of my people. Somebody comes up to you like that, you say, "I refuse the information, I don't want it." And if they keep trying, that's harassment. You get the head of the store or whatever. Now, there are some people who legitimately do that. That's like at Lilydale, the spiritualist community in New York. If you were approached by someone from there, they might say, "Excuse me, but my name is Reverend Shirley, and I am a spiritualist at Lilydale. I believe I have a message for you. May I come to you?" May I come to you is the magic phrase. And if you say yes, they will give the message. But if you say no, they zip it, they nod, and they walk away figuring Spirit will get you the message another way. That's legit.
When you boil it right down, that's really just assault. If you're not,
and having respect for someone.
It's happened to me, especially rookie healers at psychic fairs. Look, I've done 4-day shows in Canada where I'm reading open to close. I read 70 people and do 2 lectures. And at the end of the day, I have a headache and I'm doing this. And some little rookie is going to go, "Hi, my name is Little Dancing Raccoon and my spirit guide Arctic Bear, and we know Reiki, we can help." And they come at you like this, and I say, "No, thank you. No, really, we can do it. I'd prefer you didn't. Just let me back off." You're not very love and light, are you? Well, you didn't listen.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
when someone is doing healing work on you, they're getting into your energies. I don't
Right.
want to need an insulin shot after somebody messes with my hurt neck.
Yeah.
I don't.
Right.
Mhm.
Sure.
Anyone
And I'm,
who's a
you know,
true healer understands you make the offer, and if it's
Right.
no, it's no.
well, it's all about respect.
Yep.
I mean,
Sure is.
no matter
And-
what it's about, it should be about respect.
And understanding free will. Your ego does not trump anybody's free will, ever.
Right.
You know, if someone
Yeah.
is dying on the sidewalk, yeah, then maybe, but not if it's just, yeah, you have
Right.
a headache.
Yeah. Then consent is given, just like in the medical community.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow.
Well, we're kind of building towards the end here.
Already?
We've kind of
Too
covered
much
quite
fun.
yeah. No, and it's a blast. And hey, we're more than happy to have you back too if you ever want to. But we covered a lot of different topics, and what would you like? What takeaway would you like our audience to have, and how do they reach out to you if they want any follow up or any questions or anything like that?
Okay. And of course, now is when I'm sneezing. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
You're fine.
It's winter.
Yeah. Not to mention it's single digits out there. So,
yeah,
true.
Okay. For all of you who are beginning to be interested in this, but don't know any of us, The Psychic Yellow Brick Road, How to Find the Real Wizards and Avoid the Flying Monkeys was written for you. It is not how to be a psychic, but it's how to find a real one, what questions to ask, what to steer away from, when to run. Because good psychic guidance is art, and you shouldn't settle for a forgery. And I don't care if you never come to me after you've read this book. If it enables you to go to any other intuitive, feel safe, and get the good information, all boats rise, and I have done my job. If you do want to have a reading with me, I am kind of hard to avoid. You find me on my website, CorbieMitleid.com. There are hundreds of articles there. There's my podcast there. You can see if I'm going to be out and about in the world. And there are like 24 different kinds of readings based on what you're interested in. You can also find me on Facebook, Corbie Mitleid of Fire Through Spirit. You can find me on Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube. And if you really want to work with me, I teach at my Patreon group. It's what we call The Nest, not Feather's Nest. And it's only about 15 of us. And I teach, and if it's not me, I bring in the best teachers worldwide. And you learn. Because kids, I am 69. I am not going to be here forever. We need to raise the next generation.
Yeah.
That's
well
great.
said. That's perfect.
Perfect rounding it out.
Absolutely. Well, do you want to have anything else you want to add, or?
Not right now. I think my mind is just so blown that I can't
Speaking out the
properly.
ears, I'm sorry, I do that.
Think
No,
of all
that's
the
perfect.
questions. I know I'm going to think of them probably about an hour later and be like, oh, I should have asked this and should have asked this. But I'm just actively processing
For sure.
everything that you've said. But thank you so much for coming on and teaching us, because you have taught us.
Yeah, for sure.
And the audience. And yeah, it's been great.
I had a great time too.
Well,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, the offer's always there. Door's always open. If you want to come back, I'm sure we'd love to have you.
As we see in New York, we'll talk. We'll have coffee, you know.
Yeah.
Love
great.
that. That's awesome. Well, on that note, we'll go ahead and we'll sign off. Well, what do you think?
Mind blown.
Yeah, right?
I know I've said it several times throughout this, but
Yeah.
wow, there's just so much information.
Yeah, and if you hadn't got,
Yeah.
in our interview, she's crazy easy to talk to. Mm-hmm. So, it first of all, it really helps us to be able to create like that rapport where it's kind of laid back and everybody's okay to talk about certain things.
Right.
But yeah, I guess some of that stuff I'd heard before, but never quite at that angle. Like, especially I got to admit, the one that always gets me is the pets. We're huge pet owners. We love animals.
And to know that they could come back.
Yeah, I'd love to
Yeah.
see my dear old boy Orion again and Apollo. And these are our pets, by the way. And I'm sure I'll put pictures up because any chance I have to show them off, I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
But I always find that interesting about past lives. And what a great lesson about retrieval versus regression.
Yeah, and we made sure that she explained that because I thought they were the same thing. I had no idea that there was a difference, and I would assume that the majority of you listening didn't either.
Right,
I
especially those that aren't in you know that knowledge pool that don't.
Right. They're significantly different, and the regression seems a little bit scarier.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's probably why there
you're
needs to be
fully in it, almost like what's that video game you used to play? Assassin's Creed.
Go into the Animus.
Yeah, that's how I my mind was picturing the past life regression. Like you're there, like you're living.
Yeah, it kind of
that
is.
life.
Yeah.
Whereas the retrieval is more just knowing the information about what you were doing.
Right.
And you're not feeling the feelings and you're there.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine myself going through Ezio in the middle of the Italian, Renaissance with blades. That would be scary if you were in that. But,
it'd be kind of cool.
Oh, for some that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But no, we had a great time, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. As we always say, we cover pretty much everything here on this show. Of course, true crime as well. Not just the paranormal woo-woo. We do have some fun with some of the true crime, which we did one recently, and has a really good response of, some recent news. We won't get into it because there's a video out there, but you should watch the one that's about Gypsy Rose. Just letting you know. But no, it's great to cover these things. We don't always cover just about, ghosts, UFOs, those sort of things. So.
Well, and I think it provides so much information, and everybody, we as humans have free will to believe what we want to believe.
For sure.
But always, opening your mind to a new perspective on something. I mean, that's how we learn. That's how we grow.
Yeah.
And this is why we provide these, experts that do what they do, and, they can help people. Mm. And if you don't like it, you can turn it off.
Yeah.
But, if you're interested or curious or have thought about going to see someone, because there's something in your life that doesn't make sense, like she was saying, you have almost an obsession with something. You can't figure out why. Mm-hmm. There could be a reason to do with a past life. I mean, maybe you want to explore that more. So you should contact her if you feel like that's the journey that you're on. But, providing information never hurt anyone.
No, it sure doesn't.
Yeah. So.
Well, listen, guys, we had a blast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We've got some great stuff coming up. I know I say that all the time, but the things you're able to pull are just crazy. She's the brains behind the operation, if you hadn't gotten that already. But thanks again. Mm-hmm. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next week. Got some good stuff.
See you next week, guys.
All right, we'll see you. Bye.
Bye.
Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Check out our YouTube at GenerationXParanormal. Also, check out our Facebook, Generation X Paranormal Podcast. Love to have you. See you then.